welcome into the Why You're Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast, the Simpsburg Steelers, Episode 5. So, sad. Big sad right now, guys. Gibbs season has been cut short. Honestly, I was watching the game, and I was like, I think I'd rather would have lost Dalvin Cook than Antonio Gibson at this point.
Wow.
I know, it sounds crazy to say, but Dalvin Cook ends with Chicago and the Saints. Gibson would have ended with Seattle and Carolina.
And now if you have J.D. McKissick, your team's going to be rolling into the playoffs.
Right. And I don't have most likely I will be playing someone next week that has J.D. McKissick, so I'm going to be seeing all these points knowing that I should have got them, and he's getting them instead.
Hey, I just can't wait for your downfall, and this is the start. It's just in time for playoffs.
Yeah. So honestly, there was finally an update today because with the 72 hours just refreshing his name constantly in Google. And the current update is that he's doubtful for this week and will be evaluated as the week goes on. So there's a silver lining that maybe it's not that bad, Brian. Maybe he could come back for week 15 or maybe week 16. But
I highly doubt that, but they are pushing for the playoffs, so they might bring him back just for that sake.
Right. The reality is how bad of a turf toe injury that he has. There's no way he'd be the same even if he came back for week 16.
Completely agree. Turf toe is an injury that historically will plague a player for the entire year, or even onto next year. That's a horrible, horrible injury.
What's so hard is that it's such a common injury. But it's so easy to avoid. It's literally just a split second that a foot is fully bent and then a man falls on it. Which, if you think stubbing your toe sucks, imagine stubbing your toe while 300-pound man is pushing against it.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
I don't do injuries like that.
And a toe injury is such it sounds like such a wussy injury until you have a toe injury.
Yep. I mean, the running back's job is literally to run, and you run on your feet. So.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Tough break.
To move on from that, it's week 14, guys. First round of playoffs. Did you guys make it in?
I can speak for myself. Yes.
In my two other leagues, though, I got 2 bye weeks.
It sounds like you got a bye week in all your leagues right now, because I think you actually have a bye week.
I got a bye week in the consolation bracket,
Yeah.
So I cannot come in last.
Nice. For me, I made it in, but my first week, since I have the bye, is week 15, and all my players have horrific matchups. With losing Gibson, I really don't have a saving grace. I could easily get bounced, regardless of who wins between Aiden and Juan. But just to tell everyone else, remember, it doesn't matter what your record is. It doesn't matter how many points you've scored, Chris. Nothing matters except the current week you're in right now.
Quoted by JD Bleep Ramon.
Yeah. So, let's focus on what you should do if you're in. I think, as a general tip, you should be focusing on the current week, since if you don't have a bye week, you're playing right now. Some strategies that I would suggest is pick up the best defense you can, because a defensive touchdown and an interception or a few sacks can completely swing a game. And also be aware of the weather. If a team is playing outside, bad weather can affect the game flow. It's really awful for receivers and kickers, but can be great for a run-heavy team that has a good running back, and it's also great for defenses. Do you have any other suggestions for people in playoffs right now?
Yeah, anything goes. This is when, I've been in leagues before in the past where I picked up a waiver wire guy in week 12, week 13, and they bring it home. Who was it? Ted Ginn one year when he was on the Panthers brought it home for me. He's a waiver wire guy. So be smart, be on your toes, always be looking for injury updates. This is when it counts.
Yeah, I mean, if I was in the playoffs in this league, but I have a bye in the other league. If I were to be playing, though, and I had Josh Allen, they're playing Pittsburgh this week, and I'd highly consider picking someone up because I think that Josh Allen's probably going to get less than 15 points against Pittsburgh's defense, but that's just my take. So play matchup proof. If someone's playing a good defense, you might want to consider picking someone up, like John said, but yeah, that's my advice.
So, at what point do you favor the player talent or the matchup that someone has? For example, it totally depends on the player and the role in the offense. So, you're playing your ones. But for your twos, could depend on the matchup. Flexes are matchup dependent, or they're just shot in the dark prayers. But for example, if you have a player with a horrific matchup, they've done well for your team all season long, but they're playing a top defense, would you consider swapping them out for a mid-ranked player playing a great matchup?
I guess it depends on the player, right? Yeah. If you have a top 10 first-round draft pick, you play him every single week. But if someone's historically prone to doing poorly in bad matchups, then you got to make a tough decision. There's some players in our league, Chris, who will always start the big name player no matter what. There's no thought involved, and that's why he's never won a championship. You got to make tough decisions.
You won't
in the
even
playoffs.
think twice to sit Miles Sanders in his other league when Miles Sanders has combined for like 15 points in the last 3 games and is nothing in that offense is working, and Miles Sanders not doing anything. Just doesn't even take.
Miles Sanders is a perfect name that I want to ask. This is the scenario. Miles Sanders has been bad the last 3 weeks. Playing. Does he have a soft matchup this week? I'm blanking on who they're playing.
I believe it's
New Orleans.
Never mind. Not an easy matchup.
Run,
yeah.
Probably the best run defense.
So Miles Sanders versus a great run defense, or would you rather play, if he's healthy, Cam Akers versus the Pats, or for example, DeAndre Swift versus Green Bay?
I'm starting one of those 2 guys because I've said this on previous podcasts and I'll say it again. You can't trust anyone on the Eagles offense. I mean, Carson Wentz is out. Carson Wentz is on the bench. You have the elf on the shelf, and now we have Carson Wentz on the bench. But, so you start Cam Akers or DeAndre Swift if you can.
Let me bring up another name. Dalvin Cook. I'm a Dalvin Cook owner. A lot of other people are. Has the hardest fantasy schedule for running backs, but is now the number 1 back on the year with Gibson being out. He has the Bucs this week, Chicago next week, and the Saints to wrap it up. Would you play anyone over Dalvin Cook with those matchups?
Never.
No.
You should never, ever, 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 ever sit Dalvin Cook. You just have to eat the matchup and play him.
Yep.
Never sit him.
Completely agree. He will score double-digit points regardless of the matchup.
Right. So that's what is getting into some mad beats of the week. The Simpsburg Steelers. Undefeated streak ended. Lost to a team without a name. The Steelers running backs did nothing for you. Logan Thomas on the Washington side had a career day, finished with about 20 points. Is there rookie Sims emerging as the wide receiver too? Could he be that flex guy who wins you a championship?
I said before the game started to Aiden that Washington was going to win, and he laughed in my face and said, no way. And I said, their defense is emerging. They've been playing great the past couple of weeks. Alex Smith has been a very accurate quarterback who can throw those slant passes. Gibson was running hard until that was failed, and then now McKissick came in. But I really think that the Steelers are honestly the worst 11-0 or 11-1 team now in the entire league, and they've played the easiest matchups possible. And they got some tough matchups coming up to end their season. It's going to really show coming into playoffs that, they're not the team that people think they are.
Right. Another event. Frank got Gore this week. Many people had to rely on Gore due to the widespread injuries of running backs. Going into week 13, Gore also gets injured, gets concussed, ends up with 0.2 points. What do you do? What do you do?
First game since 2007, Frank Gore hasn't played. I'd have to start him. I put him in my lineup, and he gets 0.2 points and gets hurt on the very first play of the game, essentially losing my game and not making the playoffs because of it, because he hasn't missed a game since 2007, and I started him the one time in 2020 where he gets hurt and taken out.
Yeah, I can't believe that it took this long for Frank Gore to not play.
Yeah.
Why
You would think he would have retired, but he just straight up just got hurt in a game.
It's unbelievable. The Jets are a winless team, and they're running Frank Gore like crazy. It's unbelievable. You got young guys on that team. It drives me nuts. But anyways, I think they got some good young guys on the team, like Ty Johnson, Josh Adams. It's kind of we don't really know who's going to get the run, but if you're desperate, I say go for it.
Are you desperate enough, if let's say you need a running back position, are you desperate enough to pick up Ty Johnson? Because last year he burned a lot of people when he got picked up last year for fantasy.
Well, I colluded actually a couple of years ago, apparently, according to Aiden, and I gave my friend advice on who to start, and he started a Jets running back, Elijah McGuire, who dropped 34 points in the championship game. So if you got to trust a Jets running back like Ty Johnson, who just had a pretty decent game last week, I'd go for it. And
they're
pick him
playing
up and start
Seattle too,
which is a very good matchup, very high scoring. I bet you the Jets probably put up maybe 21 to 24 points, and they still lose, but still the points are there, and Ty Johnson's a quick, shifty receiving back, so we'll see.
Yeah.
22 touches last week after Gore went down. That's pretty...
He was running hard. That's what I'm saying. If Gore was in the game, would have got me 3 points at least, but maybe not what Ty Johnson's doing, because he's a little bit more athletic than a 49-year-old Frank Gore. Just kidding. Whatever he is.
After a few weeks, Lamar came back. not really the performance you wanted from Lamar if you were relying on fantasy options besides himself. 107 pass yards sounds horrible, but he had 2 passing touchdowns, and then Lamar Jackson, as always, 94 rush yards, rushing touchdown, finished with 26 points. Hollywood, as you've been mentioning, Brian, finally got another touchdown. But can you trust someone who's only throwing for 100 to 200 yards to really feed your fantasy options?
Yes. Yes, you can. Why? Because Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson. He did what he did last year. You got to start him in the playoffs. He gets so much points on the ground. Regardless, I think he's a terrible passer, but you got to play the guy.
In terms of QBs, I'm pretty sure he has the easiest schedule in playoffs, facing Cleveland, Jacksonville, Giants in those 3 games.
Don't count out Cleveland.
Yeah, but they still let up a lot of points even though they win games.
A lot of people who drafted Lamar Jackson in the 3rd round probably didn't make playoffs, speaking to you, Thal. But I'm talking about the fantasy players affected by how Lamar Jackson plays. I'm talking about your Mark Andrews, your Hollywood Brown. So probably the only 2 receiving options you play for the Ravens. How does it make you feel going forward into playoffs if he's only throwing for 100, 200 yards a game?
Yeah, that's tough. Any receivers, I think Mark Andrews is really the only startable guy. He likes to throw to his tight ends.
I think Hollywood was the only valuable this week just because Mark Andrews is playing. But when Mark Andrews is in the lineup and he only throws the ball like 15 times a game, like 8 of those targets are going to go to Mark Andrews. And then they plug in Willie Schneid, another 4 or 5 targets. And next thing you know, Hollywood's only getting 3 targets a game. So it's like you really can't trust anyone but Mark Andrews because the tight ends are so limited. But I would just probably stick with Mark Andrews and wouldn't start any of the other guys.
Speaking of a really quick turnaround for his repair, Derek Carr, 1.6 points against Atlanta last week, drops 32.7 against the Jets. What was that all about, guys?
I think I could drop 32.7 against the Jets.
Yeah, but I bet you could also drop 32 points against Atlanta's defense.
Probably not. Maybe like 12 to 15. But yes, you get the point.
Yeah.
The Jets had a win. I picked them in my pick'em pool, knowing the Jets were going to win. They won that football game, and Henry Ruggs decided to show off his 4.3 speed, and he just lobbed it up. First of all, Derek Carr's throwing power when he was on 1 foot just lobbed it up over the Jets' cornerback and absolutely floated into Henry Ruggs. And I can't believe it happened because I thought the Jets actually won. But
I think Greg Williams blew the game.
I think he did too for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, 100%. You don't blitz that many guys on a play like that. That's just he got fired.
No safety coverage.
He got fired, but I bet it was coming from up top. The Jets have to fire the guy because then everyone's going to know their purpose.
Honestly, my belief is that up top has purposely kept Adam Gase as the head coach for this long until they get the guaranteed number 1 pick, and then I bet they fire him.
Yeah, it's smart. It truly is smart.
I think so too. Yeah. As soon as they draft Lawrence, it's like
you're gone.
You're out.
Somebody knows what they're doing.
What are you talking about? Nope, you're out.
Do you think Adam Gase could become the coach that is known for getting your team a guaranteed first-round draft pick?
Yeah, I mean, he could be a top paid coach in the league as a tank coach.
Yeah,
I think you would be in the Hall of Fame as the best coach ever to be known as for tanking.
Yeah. It takes a lot of skill to lose that often.
Right.
Like, I think I could go in there and win a couple games, and he's just the worst coach I've ever seen.
Yeah, you could put a brick at head coach and win more games than Adam Gase.
Speaking of bricks or fantasy lineup, Derrick Henry, Miles Sanders, Raheem Mostert, Todd Gurley all went for less than 6 points last week. Wow. Fellas like Jonathan Taylor scored 21, Adrian Peterson 18, Jaden McKissick 13, and J.K. Dobbins 13.
Yes, sir.
A lot of those performances probably lost a lot of guys fantasy games and probably eligibility for fantasy playoffs. Do you guys have better feelings for those guys going forward? For me, I see Derrick Henry rebounding, Mostert potentially rebounding. I don't know how I feel about Sanders and Gurley.
Yeah, Gurley. I have Gurley in one of my leagues, and it's funny because as a Gurley owner, I knew the entire year that he wasn't good. He was playing hurt, like he's not the same Gurley. But they'd give him too many red zone touches that he would just score too many touchdowns. I'm like, all right, I'll keep throwing him in there as an RB2. I think he's done. Now he actually has a quote unquote injury. You can't trust Gurley the rest of the way.
The Atlanta Falcons. What are they known for? Losing football games and choking. What does that mean? They are down in most football games. What does that say about Todd Gurley? Probably not going to be in the game because he's not going to be running the ball. Todd Gurley is not a good... He is okay when they get to the red zone. I'll give you that just because he's touchdown dependent, but he is so touchdown dependent that you can't trust him in your lineup whatsoever.
Completely agree. My run is gone.
But when he does get a touchdown, he could drop 20. It's either 20 or 3, so you take that risk.
Yep. And then as far as Mostert, I like him. I think he's one of those guys that can go off any week. I've always strayed away from San Francisco 49ers running backs just because...
It's a revolving door.
It is a revolving door. You never know. It could be him. It could be Jeff Wilson. It could be McKinnon. You never know. But I think if you have him, he's a good RB3, maybe RB2. You got to throw him.
He's like one of those guys, your floor is going to be 5 points, your ceiling could be 20, 25.
Yep.
Kyle Shanahan loves a running offense, and Mostert, when he gets the carries, will do well, but then again, you never know who's going to get the touches in that offense.
And it's frustrating when Mostert gets him all the way there, and then Jeff Wilson Jr.
punches
scores
him
a touchdown.
Or Kyle Juszczyk with a nice fullback dive.
Yeah, Kyle Juszczyk. Oh, nothing's more frustrating.
The fullback dive touchdown. It's more frustrating than the quarterback dive touchdown.
Yeah. 100% agree.
Because if you're going to decide to hand the ball off, give it to the guy who's going to have a better shot.
It's true. It is frustrating as hell.
All right, to get into the first why you're wrong segment player, this is going to sound weird because I just kind of had this moment where I would have rather him been hurt over my other guy, but I'm going to tell you why you're wrong about Dalvin Cook. And this is a very low-hanging fruit because I was trying to think of who to pick for this segment. So we all know Dalvin Cook is the running back 1 on the year, drafted as RB5, 251 carries, 1,250 yards, 13 touchdowns, 25 receptions, 314 yards, 1 touchdown. He's been crushing it. So this is just to go along the lines, Dalvin Cook is probably one of the few matchup-dependent running backs. Even though he has an awful 3-game slate for playoffs, his lowest game so far this season that he hasn't gotten hurt in has been about 11 points for Chicago. So, and that's without a touchdown. So he could easily get floor 10 points. Ceiling, as we know, is probably 30 or 40. Not likely going into these matchups. You're probably realistically looking around 15, 17 points from Dalvin Cook going to the next few weeks. Do you guys agree?
I have him in my other league. That's just... that team's just too dominant to the point where I'm not going to lose that championship. But I think that Dalvin's probably going to get somewhere between 15 to 20 points. But when he does play good run defenses like Chicago, and I've said this before in the past, it's like plays Green Bay, drops 47. Unbelievable. Plays the next worst rushing defense, Detroit, drops 38. But then he plays Chicago and drops 13. Then he plays Carolina, another really good run defense, and drops 8. There's definitely like a reoccurring thing where when he plays good run defenses, he drops below 20 points. So I think he's probably going to be somewhere between like 13 and 20 points against like Tampa, Chicago, and New Orleans. But I don't think he cracks more than 20, to be honest.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they're a run-first football team. Start him every time you go out. He's a confident RB1.
He's like one of those guys where like he's gotten you to the championship. There's honestly probably no one you'd play over him. Just play him.
Yeah, there's not many guys that can drop close to 50 points. And if you have one of those guys, start him with confidence no matter what. Just set it and forget it.
Agreed.
Right. Another why you're wrong player. Wide receiver Marquise Brown. Brian's pick, who we mentioned briefly earlier already today. 67 targets, 26 receptions, 516 yards. That might have been a typo on the receptions. I take that back. Averages 8.3 points per game. Wide receiver 42 on the year, but drafted as the wide receiver 32.
Yeah, 41 receptions.
Yeah, no, he was absolutely just awful this season. Lamar Jackson can't hit a guy when he's wide open by 20 feet. But the reason why I feel like he's worthwhile to be a streamer in the playoffs because he faced a tough stretch in the beginning of the year. He played Washington, he played Pittsburgh, he played Indy, he played the Pats, he played Pittsburgh again. There's a lot of tough matchups out there, but he ends the year again with an easy playoff matchup with Cleveland, Jacksonville, Giants, who all let up a ton of points. And I think that if you could just hope for a 60-yard bomb from Marquise Brown within the playoffs, and if you're really hurting that receiver, I would plug and play him and trust him again because that connection's been looking pretty good the last 2 weeks. So it's a worthwhile pick, but I would go for it.
Yeah, and to kind of build off that, the Ravens are fighting for a playoff spot. They started off really slow as a team. I like them for the next few games. I think they're gonna probably win out at this point. So I agree. Start Marquise Brown.
All right, that gets to our third why you're wrong player tonight. This is running back Damien Harris. And I actually got excited when you sent me this player's name, John, because it makes me feel like makes me feel good about the trade I had earlier this season, because he's a player that I knew was going to pop off. I just didn't have room for him on my bench at this point, so I was trying to find someone to trade him to. So Damien Harris on the year, 126 carries, 641 yards, 2 touchdowns, averages 9 points a game. He's running back 40 on the year, but that's throughout the entire weeks 1 through 13. He didn't play until week 4. So if you only count it from week 4 to this current week, he's actually the RB25, drafted as the running back 73.
Yeah. Damien Harris. He's I think he's a good player. He's a young guy. I think he's a pretty solid. I've been playing him in my flex spot pretty consistently because his floor is probably like 5 points. 5 points, I would say, with the ceiling of like 20. He hasn't scored 20 points. I think his high is 16. But that's just because he hasn't scored multiple touchdowns in a game yet.
And I think that's because his quarterback's name is Cam Newton. If his quarterback wasn't Cam Newton, he'd probably be dropping 15 to 20 points a game because he'd get all the goal line rushes.
Yep, completely agree. So yeah, he's not a guy that's an RB1, probably not even an RB2, but he's definitely a guy that you can start in your flex spot with confidence. And he's not even boom or bust. He's more of like a consistent guy that could pop off.
I think he's consistent. I think he's good. But coming to the playoffs, he is in LA against the Rams, which is one of the worst matchups for a running back. And then he goes to at Miami, who's also another very good defense. And then into Buffalo, which should probably be a pretty good start in that sense. But Damien Harris just doesn't score touchdowns. Cam Newton has 11 rushing touchdowns on the year. It's like if you want a nice, consistent 10 to 13 points from your running back, go for it, but other than that, I don't think I trust him going into the playoffs.
No, I disagree. On that one. I think his weeks 15 and 16 are good weeks. He had 100 yards and a touchdown against Buffalo in Buffalo last time, and I don't think Miami is. I mean, it's an in-division game. You think the Patriots are going to lose to Miami week 15? Probably not.
All right, 15 and 16, sure. 16 definitely against Buffalo at stardom, but 15, Miami's defense is very slept on.
My belief about Damien Harris is that he will get you 80 yards no matter what. Because they love running him he carries the team between the 20s. My problem with Damien Harris is that Cam Newton loves the vulture touchdown. So it really just depends on what the Patriots are feeling. Last week, they actually gave the running backs red zone handoffs, which was surprising. Cam Newton didn't take them. So it all just comes down to what Josh McDaniels is feeling. So when it comes to what level you find Damien Harris at, I think you plug him in as the consistent running back. You're going to take the boom shot or boom or bust on your flex player. You throw Damien Harris in your RB2 spot, he's going to get you those 10 points. Or if you put him in your flex, you're putting him there because you think you have a better boom or bust running back or wide receiver, and you want your flex to be your dependable 10 points.
Yep. And the injury to Rex Burkhead too only plays well for him.
Sony Michel is irrelevant in that offense.
Yeah, Sony Michel played last week, but that's only because they were up, 6 touchdowns?
45 to nothing was the final score.
He is absolutely irrelevant. He will never play in a competitive matchup.
All right. And that wraps up our Why You're Wrong segment. Now, we're just going to enjoy a quick, short commercial break. We'll be right back with the show. Welcome back into the show. We're getting ready to play a game, which is my favorite segment of the show. So, leading off Damien Harris, we're going to play a game called Damien Harris or. So, what I like to do, just for people who are new to this game, the stats are basically the games that they played in for with their points, and then I try to compare them to guys that are within 10 spots of their range. So let's say it's running back 5. Sorry, that's a bad example. Let's say it's running back 10. I'm comparing running backs 5 through 15. So first off, Damien Harris or J.K. Dobbins?
J.K.
Better
Dobbins.
stats?
Well, so you guys know the questions I normally ask. Just right off the bat, who would you rather have right now, Damien Harris or J.K. Dobbins?
Right now, I'd rather have J.K. Dobbins.
Yep.
Okay. So, who do you think has more touches per game right now?
Damien Harris.
Damien Harris.
It is Damien Harris. Who do you think has more yards per game?
Damien Harris.
Damien Harris.
It is Damien Harris. Who do you think has more points per game?
Damien Harris.
Damien Harris.
It is Damien Harris. So why would you rather have J.K. Dobbins?
Because J.K. Dobbins was not the lead back to start the year. He's a rookie. They wanted to ease him into the role. And in the past 2 weeks, he's dropped 17 and 16 and only had 12 carries this last week. And for 90 yards, he runs very, very hard. He's an Ohio State running back just like Ezekiel Elliott. He's a one-in-a-lifetime athlete. And I don't think Gus Edwards is the greatest. He's good enough to be the RB2 on that team. And Mark Ingram's out of the league next year. So if you could start J.K. Dobbins coming into these easy matchups against, Cleveland, Jacksonville Giants, I think he's going to put points from 15 to 20 and is the goal line back as well compared to Damien Harris, who only gets 14 carries for 60 to 80 yards but doesn't score touchdowns.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's only trending up, so it's gotta think about the future and not the past.
All right. So you guys ready for round 2?
Let's do it.
Damien Harris or James Conner?
I'd rather have Damien Harris. Didn't he just get COVID,
Yeah.
Connor?
Healthy James Conner? I'd take healthy James Conner after what I just saw from Benny Snell. 5 carries for 9 yards was the worst performance I've ever seen. So I think I'd rather take James Conner just because that offensive line is so good, but that's only when healthy and when things are going well.
So who do you think has more touches per game?
Connor.
I'm going to go with Damien Harris.
It is James Conner.
Yeah, figured.
James Conner has 16 per game. Who do you think has more yards per game?
In games played, James Conner.
It is James Conner, but how close is it, guys?
Probably very close.
Give me a number. How close do you think it is?
By average per game?
Yeah.
2 yards.
Yeah, like 3 yards.
It's literally 2 yards.
Wow.
James Conner averages 79. Damien Harris averages 77. Who gets more points per game?
Connor.
Yeah, James Conner.
It is James Conner, 12.2, compared to Damien Harris's 9. You guys ready for round 3?
Mm-hmm.
It's another guy you probably drafted round 2, round 3. Damian Harris or Miles Sanders?
Damien Harris.
Who has more touches per game?
That's
In games
Damien
played?
Harris. Yeah.
Damien Harris.
It's Miles Sanders.
Wow.
Miles Sanders has 15.2.
Doesn't do much with it.
Who has more yards per game?
Damien Harris. No,
I want
I'm
to say
changing-
Damien
I'm
Harris so
changing it
bad,
to
but I'm
Miles
going Miles Sanders.
You change your mind, John?
I'm going Miles Sanders.
Yeah.
I don't want to take Miles Sanders.
You
It's so
don't?
bad.
So who do you want to take?
No, I'm taking Miles Sanders.
Okay.
Sanders.
It is Miles Sanders,
Yeah.
83.7. Who has more points per game?
Sanders. He had a few good weeks in the start of the year.
Yeah,
if I
he
recall
did.
correctly.
That's the only reason why I'm going Miles Sanders.
It is 11.3. Wasn't that hard? Damian Harris, who probably drafted at the very end of the draft, is almost putting up similar numbers to James Conner and Miles Sanders.
I
Probably
picked him up off waivers.
Did you?
After Jake dropped him.
And Chris will start him next week.
Start Miles Sanders, right?
Yeah.
Miles Sanders and our free agents.
What?
No,
Are you talking about Damien Harris or Miles Sanders?
I'm saying Chris will start Miles Sanders.
Oh, yeah.
I picked up Damien Harris off
Okay.
waivers.
Gotcha.
I wish I could see you like those two play against each other head to head this week.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, I don't think Chris and I could see each other in the playoffs.
It would have to be championship week.
Yeah, and he's not making it to the championship, so.
He's not making it.
No, you would see him round 2 if you beat Andrew.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're talking about the other league because Chris has Miles Sanders in the other league.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, he has a very good team in this league.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him actually.
Yeah. All right, move on to our hard to swallow pills. Wide receiver AJ Brown. Now this guy is my pick. Hasn't had an awful year. 72 targets, 44 receptions, 725 yards, 8 touchdowns. Averages 14.7 points per game. Wide receiver 18 on the year. Drafted as the wide receiver 15. Now he's on my hard to swallow pill list because drafted him as the wide receiver 15, hoping that he'd be the guy that crack a top 10. But unfortunately, this other receiver on the Titans named Corey Davis has decided to ruin that. Corey Davis has blown up this year. He's not on the same level as A.J. Brown, but I think at this point, Ryan Tannehill really doesn't care the difference between the two. He throws to the one that's open. A.J. Brown's had drops. A.J. Brown's had fumbles. He's just lucky to fall into the end zones a few more times than Corey Davis, but it's basically been a show it's one or two, not one or two, like that too.
I do have to say I had two less waiver than Andrew, and he picked up Corey Davis when he was my top waiver guy, and I knew he was going to go off. He dropped 35 points.
Something crazy.
And he didn't even start him, which is the most frustrating part about it. But I think that A.J. Brown's actually a really good player. I think that offense is rolling. I think they run the ball with Derrick Henry, 8 yards, play action, A.J. Brown across the middle, and it works to perfection. So I think you can trust him and Corey Davis going into the playoffs, but I think that A.J. Brown definitely has a higher ceiling than Corey Davis.
So here's actually my fear. They're playing Jacksonville this week, right? This is traditionally the game where Derrick Henry rolls for about 1 million yards and 1 million touchdowns. I could easily see that being no points for Tannehill and almost no points for Davis and Brown because it's all going to go to Derrick Henry. Do you think that, because on paper, Jacksonville's a great matchup for every position, but with the way the Titans play, I just feel like Derrick Henry is going to take everyone's points this week.
I was going through defenses and I was looking at good defense matchups throughout the playoffs, and I saw the Titans had really good matchups for defense, and I was like, why is no one picking them up? And I looked at their defense and I was like, they are just an atrocious defense.
Bad.
Atrocious. So if Derrick Henry gets 2 touchdowns, and Jacksonville's actually been putting up points. Don't sleep on Jacksonville. They put up points here and there. So if they can keep a game close and they can play action one time, they're going deep to A.J. Brown. And you have to start him just for the sole fact that he could get a 70-yard touchdown.
Yep. He could take it to the house on a crossing route over the middle. You never know.
Easily. The next hardest swallow pill. Running back Frank Gore, Brian. 142 carries, 523 yards, 1 touchdown, 13 receptions, 70 yards, averages 6 points per game. Running back 46 on the year. Drafted as the running back 72. Only reason he's that high is because Le'Veon Bell left town. But I think there's a very specific reason why he's on this list right now for you.
Frank Gore deserves to retire from football. I wish he retired 3 years ago, so I never had the opportunity to be able to even start him in my league where I had to trust him to get at least 3 points, and he gets hurt on the very first play.
If Frank Gore got you 40 yards, you would have won the game.
What's even crazier is if I started Brashad Perriman, I would have lost by 0.3 points. But I had Henry Ruggs in my lineup on Wednesday and Thursday, and I took him out for Frank Gore, and this man gets hurt on the first play. That is why he's hard to swallow, and I have nothing else to say.
That's a tough break, man. It's a tough break. You started the name guy is what you did.
I wanted the carries. I didn't want to trust Henry Ruggs, who's gotten 3 targets in the last 7 weeks.
There's something about running back carries that seems more trustful for fantasy, but then at the end of the day, when 20 carries gets you 5 points and then 2 catches gets you 55 yards and a touchdown, it feels real bad.
Yeah, he's just old as hell. That's the only problem.
I mean, he had 14-10 and then 1 carry for 2 yards and a concussion in his career. So, I don't know what to say. This is a tough beat.
I'm sorry, Brian.
It's a hard-headed man. He's ending his career on a rough way.
Yep. And my fantasy season.
Yeah. John, you've picked running back Zack Moss for your hard to swallow pill. He's got 71 carries, 292 yards, 3 touchdowns, 12 receptions, 82 yards and a touchdown. Averages 7.5 points per game. He's running back 50 on the year. Drafted with high hopes as the running back 40, so he's definitely digressed from what people were expecting. How you feeling on him?
Yeah, he sucks. That's how I feel about him. So I drafted him in a few of my leagues, and I've kept him on my teams throughout the entire year in hopes that he would overtake Devin Singletary, which he kind of has. And so, more or less, and after this week, he fumbled within, the 5-yard line, got benched for the rest of the game.
It was Josh Allen's fumble, but apparently, it was Zack Moss's fault, but it was awarded to Josh Allen because he never grabbed the ball.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, clearly the coach thought it was his fault because he benched him for the rest of the game.
It was his fault because he never grabbed the ball. He went like this, he reached out for the ball, and it was awarded to Josh Allen because he never had possession of it.
Yep, so he panicked. And, hate myself for taking up a roster spot in 2 leagues throughout it. Now week 13 of just Zack Moss being on my bench when I could have picked up a guy with a lot more upside. I mean, I just knew he was going to be a better running back than Devin Singletary, but he just hasn't done it this year.
I think the hard part, the thing I think that's really funny about Zack Moss is one of the few weeks where you would have been happy starting him. You would have won the game if you kept him in his lineup, but then you took him out and played Damien Harris instead, who would have almost won you the game, but then got hurt on the last drive. I think I beat you by like less than 2 points because of that. And if you had played Zack Moss, you would have beat me fair and square.
Yeah, it happens.
As a Josh Allen fantasy owner, their offense is very selective. It's Singletary during like the first 50 yards, and they bring in Zack Moss in the red zone, and it's like, oh, Zack Moss is going to get a touchdown. It's like Josh Allen runs it in for 5 yards.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just every single time.
The thing is, their number one running back is Josh Allen.
It is.
Yep.
All right. Now to get in some waiver wire wisdom. Weirdly in week 14, I thought I was going to be fine. I was rolling with my team. All they needed to do was not get hurt, and they broke my heart. So now I am forced to look at the waiver wire, looking at wide receivers. The names I'm going to list are guys that are open in our league because it's a 12-team league. So they may be there in your league or may not be. First one on the list is Michael Gallup for the Cowboys, owned in 41% of Yahoo leagues. Last week with Andy Dalton, 11 targets for 786 and a touchdown. But for me, he's one of 3 wide receivers. I feel like they all get looks evenly, unfortunately, with Andy Dalton. Another guy, Cam Sims, on the football team, currently owned in 0% of leagues. He had 9 targets, went 5 for 92 with them. Seems to be emerging as the wide receiver 2 in Washington. Then Josh Reynolds, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. He's not going to get the top coverage because he's not the main guy. But now he's competing with Van Jefferson for the wide receiver 3 spot. And his targets have declined over the last few weeks. He went from having 10 targets a game to 2. So out of those 3 guys, do you feel confident in any of those dudes, or are you just going to let them sit on waivers?
Well, I'm going to let those guys sit on waivers and pick up the main guy. Since I'm not in the playoffs anymore, go pick up Denzel Mims against Seattle this week because he is going to ball out. This man has to get targets week after week for the Jets, and he has been lights out for them. He's only getting 8 to 10 points, but when you play a team like Seattle, this guy could drop 20 points, I'm telling you. He's a great pickup. Go pick him up and start him.
Well, as of today, he is away from the team for quote-unquote personal issues.
Is it?
Yep.
God, never mind then. Any? I would actually add Bashar Perriman so you guys can't pick him up.
A
but
family emergency.
Anyone who's playing Seattle.
Yep. Hope all is well with Denzel Mims, but you might want to grab a piece of that Jets offense this week. I mean, if they're playing better as of late, they just fired Greg Williams. I mean, you could see him put up some points against Seattle. I don't think they're gonna win, but they might score some points.
As a Seattle fan and watching us lose to the Giants last week, knowing that if that blocked punt was a touchdown and not a safety, we would have won the game. I'm not thrilled personally, but do I see the Jets beating us? No. If they beat us, I'm going to cry, and I think the season's lost at that point. But
there's no chance that the Jets beat Seattle.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know in this day and age, Brian. But
the Seahawks like to play down to their competition.
It's awful. But if you had to play someone, Ty Johnson's a sneaky start this week. Jamison Crowder is going to be fantastic. Perryman could easily catch a deep bomb. And if Mims decides to play, easily be a good guy to pick up.
Yeah, the receivers are so tough for the waiver wire.
So,
it's not looking good.
If they're still there, they're not on our waivers, but they could be on yours. Alan Lazard for the Packers. T.Y. Hillen for the Colts had a blow-up game versus the Texans. Jacoby Myers on the Pats, or Sammy Watkins on the Chiefs, or if Perryman's still sitting there on the Jets, he could be a good play this week.
Yeah, T.Y. I think only plays good against Houston and only Houston, so I think he'll take his regressed roll back as the weeks come. But you could take a risk on him and see what happens. I just don't believe in T.Y. Hilton whatsoever.
That's a fair point. I like Jacoby Myers this week. I think there's going to be kind of a shootout on Thursday night. And his targets have been kind of down these past few weeks, but the Patriots have also been winning. They haven't been playing from behind, so look for him to get an uptick in targets this week.
So actually, speaking of a player in that game, or should be in that game, we don't know yet depending on his injury news. Going into running backs, Cam Akers on the Rams. He's owned in 53% of leagues. He's been leading the backfield in touches, but by a slight margin. He's questionable against the Pats on a short week, so you never know. We've already mentioned this guy's name a few times. Ty Johnson for the Jets. So the next man up, play Seattle. Wayne Gallman just dropped 135 yards on my Seattle defense. I was not happy watching that. And he hurt guys in playoffs last year, so people might not want to trust them. And then, oddly enough, Leonard Fournette on the Bucs is currently sitting in our free agents pool. He's owned in 74% of leagues. So he completely splits the backfield from Ronald Jones. You never know who's going to have a better game. I feel like he's more of a guy you throw on waivers hoping someone plays him against you and watching him only get 3 to 5 points. But he can also completely take over and get 20. You just have no faith in the Bucs backfield right now.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't start anybody in the Bucs backfield at all. Cam Akers might be a good start this week too. In one of my leagues, I'm debating between him and DeAndre Swift. Those are two guys that, Cam Akers had 20 touches last week, and almost 72 yards, touchdown, and only 9, 5, and 10s of the weeks before. He's creeping up, and he's the best back in the backfield. So I think they're gonna want to run him late in the year.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Akers is definitely a good start. I think that he's emerging as that running back in that offense. I think Malcolm Brown's probably the 3. Henderson's right in between, going to be, sneaking into Cam Akers' touches. And I think that Leonard Fournette was definitely emerging as the 1A on that team. And then Ronald Jones said, screw you, I'm going to run for a 98-yard touchdown. And everything about Leonard Fournette has just gone down the drain, and don't even trust starting him in your lineup.
Yeah. Then the league-winning handcuffs, Alexander Mattison on the Vikings, Tony Pollard on the Cowboys, Jamal Williams on the Packers. You can even play Jamal Williams as a flex. He might score, but anytime the man touches the ball, he gets positive yards and a lot of them, so you never know.
I kind of like Tony Pollard. I mean, he's been taking more snaps from Zeke week by week. He's definitely not trustable in any lineup whatsoever going into playoffs, but if Zeke were to go down, I think that Tony Pollard's explosive, and if they're
RB1.
Yeah, in RB1, same with Madison too, and they could really probably win you a championship if one of those were to go down within either week 14 or week 15.
Yeah, those are league winners if you're playing the lottery and wishing for injury on one of the league's top RBs.
You should just go to another team, honestly. Tony Pollard's a pretty good running back.
Speaking of a position that you really just want to close your eyes, and honestly, you probably prefer not to actually be a position in fantasy unless you have Travis Kelce or Darren Waller, the Walrus. Tight ends suck right now. So some of the guys on waivers, Jordan Atkins on the Texans, owned in 6% of leagues. Everyone thought he was going to get more targets without Will Fuller on the roster anymore. He can easily vulture a red zone touchdown. He's the kind of guy he's either going to score or he's going to goose.
Anybody could goose. It's sorry, Brian, but in the one league that I do not have Travis Kelce, I got 2 gooses the last 2 weeks. I started Jonnu Smith and now Kyle Rudolph, and it hurts to just see a 0 in your lineup.
Right.
You're likely going to lose.
Let me bring up another name who's basically, it's felt like he's goosed you since week 2 when he dropped 3 touchdowns. Talk about Tyler Higbee on the Rams.
Gosh, yeah.
48% of leagues. He finally wanted to show up again last week. 6 targets, 4 catches, 24 yards, and 1 touchdown. Would you pick him up, or would you just let him sit there?
He's sitting there all day. He's going to sit there all day. Josh Reynolds is like a dual threat tight end, whatever. They put him in tight end position, but they also use him as a wide receiver. It's like the weirdest thing.
Well, they also have Gerald Everett.
And Gerald Everett, too.
It's too many mouths to feed.
For a position that the Rams just don't really care about.
Yeah.
The Rams have Akers, Henderson, Kupp, Woods. There's just way too many people. Higbee's just irrelevant.
I mean, it's so hard to talk about the tight end position because it's just spinning the wheel of fortune. You never know.
Hey, don't sleep on Hawkinson, too. Hawkinson's been low-key the third best tight end.
Problem is Hawkinson's not on waivers for us, Brian.
I know, but we're just talking. You're talking before about the Kelce and Darren Waller. Yeah. You gotta add, Hawkinson. And
he's got to prove it 2 years in a row. I think
he's like 10, 11 points consistently a week.
We gotta wait for it. If it transitions in the next year, then he can be in the category.
Right, fair enough.
Another guy who just had a career day, Logan Thomas, is still on waivers.
Yeah, I like him.
20 points last week. He plays the 49ers next week, who are the second best against tight ends, but after that, he's got a little bit of a softer matchup. I feel like you need to, if you're going to take a shot in the dark now, he's definitely a guy you got to consider picking up.
Yeah, they use him a lot of different ways. He's taking some snaps under center. They like to hand him the ball for rushes. There's not many tight ends like that, so I think he's the go-to guy if he's on your waiver wire.
Alex check down Smith. His Logan Thomas will benefit from it.
Yeah.
Right. And then another dude, mentioned him last week, Tyler Eifert, 6% of leagues. With Mike Glennon as quarterback, he gets some targets. It's a plus matchup. A total shot in the dark. Do you have any faith if you're going to take a shot on him, or you just never?
I don't know.
I lost faith when he was in Cincy and got his 8th concussion. I honestly didn't even know he was still playing football, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I disagree with you, Brian. He's had roughly 5 targets a game over the past 5 weeks. How many tight ends can you say that for?
Well, I've got some pretty good tight ends in all my leagues, so I choose to not look at those crappy tight
Pretty
ends.
good. So you mean Kelsey, Waller, or Hawkinson?
I have Goddard, who's been very consistent. I have Hawkinson, who's been very consistent. And I've had Hunter Henry, who's been pretty consistent.
How many points did Hunter Henry get you last week?
Not great. That's a fluke game. That's just because the Pat Stevens is too good.
Any other names you'd throw out there that might be on waivers? I saw Hayden Hurst on a few waivers.
Hayden Hurst, yeah, I'm glad you took Hayden Hurst off my team because that man is just so atrocious.
It's really become, is it going to be Hayden Hurst gets the points or Russell Gage? I think just like if it's not Julio Jones or Calvin Ridley, you just don't know on the Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, Hurst will have his days. He'll have like 9 points, which would be like a good game for Hurst. And then he'll also have like 1 catch for 9 yards. And you're going to hate starting Hayden Hurst. So that's your decision.
Yeah. I kind of like Jordan Reed. He's playing his former team next week in the Redskins.
I kind of like that too.
Yeah, no, he scored a touchdown in the past week, 4 targets.
But it was just a giant garbage time touchdown.
It doesn't matter in
Okay.
fantasy,
Okay.
John.
Sorry.
if it's not Kelsey or Darren Waller, what are you hoping for in your tight end for them
Exactly.
to score?
That's a fair point.
It's like, or else they're going to get 4 catches for 27 yards, and you're just going to have like 3.8 points from them.
Yep.
Okay. That wraps up our waiver wire wisdom. I hope that helps. If you're looking to the waivers right now, you're in a desperate situation, and I feel for you. You just got to pick your favorite guy and hope it all turns out. And the waiver guys, honestly, pick volume and matchup over player name, because at this point, player name doesn't matter. You just need someone who's going to get the looks and could score.
Agreed.
And we're going to take a quick break and then be right back with you all. Welcome back in. We are now starting our Flexing the Hardest segment of our podcast. For week 13, our managers, number 6, Jake. No one would think to put a tight end in your flex spot, but Eric Ebron came through with 10.3 points. Then Thal got lucky with a nice 60-yard run from Wayne Gallman to finish with 13.5. Messina, staying consistent with Jarvis Landry, ended with 16.4. Andrew kept faith with Deontay Johnson, ended with 17.1. Aiden put the start of all starts in this week. T.Y. Hilton got 21. And then Juan played Marvin Jones, who got 21.6 points versus Chicago, which I think shocked the fantasy world this week.
Lucky.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pure luck right there. But I mean, hey, Brian's saying that from outside the playoffs, so
As he says lucky and then tries to make a comment against it, but yes, it's very lucky.
Well,
we
yeah.
all know it.
yeah.
So right now, I think Chris is probably in the best spot with Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is a wide receiver, but basically plays running back for the 49ers. He's going to get the ball. He's great with the ball in space, and he gets the ball without being covered by a cornerback because he's in the backfield half the time. Any other names that you guys would suggest?
My bad.
Sorry.
I was trying to help out.
Wait,
Nope, one more.
you're right. Yeah, there
All
you
right.
go. I like Wayne Gallman. I think he's been pretty solid the past couple of weeks. I don't own Wayne Gallman, but I've been watching football and he's been pretty consistent in the red zone. But I think Freeman's actually coming back this week from injury, if I'm not correct.
No, he just got COVID.
He just got COVID? Okay. Then, yeah, I'd probably start. I like Wayne Gallman a lot. I like Deebo Samuel, kind of. Washington has a really good defense. I think 13.4 is a little exaggerated. But other than that, DJ Chark at 11.1,
It's hefty.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not confident in him.
Yeah.
I wish it was Antonio Gibson by a mile.
Honestly, Jarvis Landry does play very well against Baltimore every single year. And it's like, if you look at his stats against Baltimore, it's like he scores a touchdown almost every single time he plays them.
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement there. Speaking on Wayne Gallman, I have him in one of my leagues. I'm unfortunate enough to have him as my RB1, but fortunate enough to be in the playoffs, so we'll see there.
You can win with scrubs.
He's
Remember
your
that.
RB1 going into playoffs?
Yes, he's my only must start. with Joe Mixon, Todd Gurley. Well, Todd Gurley's still playing, but you can't really start
He's my
him.
RB6 in my other league.
Yeah. Okay. Some aren't as fortunate as you, Ryan. I mean, if Kenny Galladay plays and is healthy, I mean, he's probably your best flex player.
Except the problem, what's tricky about the Green Bay defense, same with the New York Giants defense, is it could be a bad team, but if they've got a shutdown corner, it's a miserable day for the wide receiver one. And Jari Alexander has been doing that all season long to the wide receiver ones.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. He has been shutting down a lot of top end receivers. Didn't shut down Adam Thielen though. Adam Thielen has balled out against Green Bay and Chicago too. So I guess it just depends on who the matchup is.
Yeah. Devontae Parker against KC could be a good one too. I always like the players that play KC because it's
As a
can be
Devontae
shootout.
Parker owner, Fitzpatrick, Devontae Parker good, Tua, Devontae Parker bad. Follow that rule and you'll win fantasy football games.
It's a fair point. Tua has proven that he's not the passer that Fitzpatrick
If Fitzpatrick's in the lineup, you start Devontae Parker without even thinking twice.
All right. Now we no longer have to project playoffs. Playoffs are here. Gentlemen, please go to the playoff matchups if you haven't already. The first game I want to talk about is the playoff seeding. So we got 4th seed Aiden versus 5th seed Juan. Aiden's projected 116. Juan's projected 107. For Aiden, I'm seeing, does Antonio Brown finally show up? He has not showed up since he came back to the league. He's got a juicy matchup with Minnesota. Does it happen? And do you think Nick Chubb can run through the Ravens defense? That kind of wholly just depends on the team. And then for Juan, we know Josh Jacobs isn't playing, so
You
I don't
mean
know.
Brian's father?
Brian's. Juan has currently changed his team name to Brian's father because he's 4-0 against Brian in fantasy so far. That's really rough. But for Juan's team, Josh Jacobs isn't playing. And does Marvin Jones blow up again? If Kenny Galladay is out, that means Jari Alexander is on Marvin Jones. I don't see it happening.
I just want to note, within those 4 wins, he has won by a combined 15 points in total out of those 4 games. Let that just be known. Second, he's got very tough matchups with Robert Woods against Gilmore. He's got David Johnson against Chicago in Chicago. He's got Josh Jacobs against Indy. And then on the flip side, Eckler against Atlanta, amazing matchup. Herbert against Atlanta, amazing matchup. A.J. Brown against Jacksonville in a high-scoring game, great matchup. And then I honestly think with how the projections are coming out, Aiden's probably going to end up winning. It's hard to say, but at this point, I'd rather see Aiden win than Juan win, just so he just shuts up for the next year.
Yeah, I think Aiden wins. Why? Because his quarterback's better.
His whole team's better.
He's got Nick Chubb against Baltimore on Monday night. I wouldn't say his whole team's better.
No,
it's pretty evenly
Thielen,
matched.
Cooks, Thielen is better than Cooks, but A.J. Brown, Robert Woods getting shut down by Gilmore or J.C. Jackson. It's just it's going to be a bad week for Robert Woods.
I just think with Juan still has the Saints defense, right? Saints defense versus Jalen Hurts. You think defense going to eat? Could get that defensive touchdown for this one?
What about Seattle against the
Jets?
Yeah,
true.
it's the same thing as they both have good matchups with defense.
Raiders just played the Jets, and they let up 28 points to the Jets, but still came away with 8 points. That's how bad the Jets are.
Yeah. I also think as far as New Orleans defense, Jalen Hurts is going to run the ball a little bit more than Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is just a pick-6 machine. So if he was playing, then I would think Juan's obviously going to win because they're going to get a pick-6, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 5. Who knows?
All right. One other question I want to talk about is the other big playoff game, the Rumney Bowl. 3rd seed John projected 117 points versus 6th seed Andrew projected 111 points. John, does Derrick Henry have his annual late season Jaguar hunt that he always does? And does McLaurin return to a somewhat decent stat line versus the 49ers? For your brother, does Alvin Kamara rebound at all? Probably not with Taysom Hill. And how do you feel about Mostert versus Washington's defensive line?
It's a good question. I think I like my chances here because my team is just overall better. My team's been performing well all year. I think Kyler Murray is going to have a good game against the Giants. McLaurin, he's questionable, and I think he played a little bit hurt last week. I hope he can come back, but he's not the guy that I'm counting on. It's Derrick Henry. I need Derrick Henry to drop 20 to 25 points to secure my victory, and I think he will.
Also nice is David Montgomery, who just finally had a big game, is playing Detroit.
Yeah, he's picking it up these last couple weeks too. David Montgomery's playing Houston, but
Oh, my bad.
But yes, he's picking it up the last few weeks. He's running the ball really well. He's getting the goal line carries. So, yeah, I like my chances.
It's sad to say it, but you guys both have a better teams than probably Aiden and Juan.
Yep.
And you guys are playing each other because Andrew's got a damn good lineup, but the sole reason I think you're going to win is just because Derrick Henry and Montgomery has been lights out lately. And you also have Travis Kelce. And Kyler Murray's playing the Giants. You have really good matchups, but on the flip side, he also has Rodgers against Detroit.
Scares me.
A-Rob against Houston. Houston's defense is so bad, and they're also projecting him to be a really good fantasy playoff guy. Corey Davis probably will take a step back. Kamara, 15. I mean, doesn't really matter. Henry's going to outscore him. Mostert against Washington's a tough matchup. And then Deontay Johnson is just absolutely disgusting. That man catches every ball that comes his... Actually, that's not true. He just gets a lot of targets, but I don't know. Your game's going to be really close, but I guarantee it's going to be like 130 to 125, and the other game's going to be like 100 to like 90.
Deontay Johnson has...
Yeah, he's nuts.
What the hell?
He's so good.
Yeah, dude's been killing it this year.
And that's the reason Juju Smith-Schuster has 8 targets a game for like 26 yards.
Yeah, watch a Steelers game for once in a while.
Or
Watch
8 catches
every
a game.
ball go to Deontay Johnson.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
All right, so guys, this week I put it out there on Instagram. If you're still listening at this point, we have an Instagram page, the Why You're Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast. So I threw a question out. What do you want to know going into playoffs? We got a question from Jay Rumney 8, and is, why is Brian our co-host if he sucks at fantasy football?
That is not true. I am actually in a league where I have played for 13 years, and I am in second place, and John is sitting in the 5 spot, projected 95 points in a playoff game.
Now. That's not true.
So if he wants to start talking
100.
smack, maybe he should win this week and worry about playing me next week when he's going to get killed.
The problem is the listeners probably hear the fact that you've been struggling a lot in this league, and I think we're going to talk about a whole draft episode. We're going to go through all that fun kind of stuff post-fantasy football season. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in this league, your team has struggled because injuries. You went very wide receiver heavy, and then the running backs that you did have also got injured.
Miles Gaskin got hurt. That's what killed it for him.
McCaffrey, Will Fuller, Galladay, the list goes on. Calvin Ridley out for 3 weeks. I mean, we could just keep going on and on. The show
injuries
never ends.
are a part of football. It's how you overcome them.
I've had the 5th most points for, and I have lost 3 games this year by less than 5 points. That's clearly nothing to do with me, and that's just very unlucky on my behalf. And
so,
I was
to bring it back to your segment last time, is it luck or skill?
That is skill on my behalf. It is unlucky to where I was put in that position.
Hey, the listeners just want to know.
Well, yeah, it's just what the
John, last time I played John in a playoff game, he scored 52 points. This was the worst game I've ever seen in my life.
The number just keeps getting lower every time he mentions this.
It is.
Started off at 76 and now it's at 52.
Tyreek Hill dropped 6.2 points. I remember it was his worst game of the season, and he dropped 52 points, and I dropped like 105. Wasn't a great performance by me, but he dropped 52 points, just saying.
All right, we actually do have a real question from Arturo Vin. You can only play one of these 3 guys, so which one would you play? Frank Gore versus Seattle, Adrian Peterson versus Green Bay, Ronald Jones versus Minnesota.
Well, Frank Gore's hurt, man.
Yeah, so it's really just
Frank Gore.
Adrian Peterson versus Green Bay or Ronald Jones versus Minnesota.
Adrian Peterson versus Green Bay. It depends on DeAndre Swift's role. I mean, watch the updates coming in. They're saying he might have a small package. He's definitely going to play. But if the update comes out that he's not going to play anywhere like close to the full snaps, you got to start Peterson.
I agree completely.
So I'm just going to open this up to if we have any questions that the other people at this table can answer, because I have my own fantasy dilemma. So, unfortunately, Robert Woods has to deal with either J.C. Jackson or Stephon Gilmore. Plays on Thursday. Real quick decision. Would you rather play Robert Woods this week versus a tough matchup, or would you have the prayer on Antonio Brown doing something versus Minnesota instead?
Start Robert Woods.
No, I would start Robert Woods too, just for the big playmaking ability.
Big playmaking ability, and they like to move him around. I mean, they've got a pretty dynamic offense. I wouldn't even count on Gilmore being on him the whole time or anything of that nature.
I mean, if you ask Aiden and Chris, they're going to say Antonio Brown just because he's on their fantasy team, but I think that Antonio Brown's nothing but a decoy in that offense.
Well, there's a reason Aiden and Chris are not at this table.
Do you guys have any questions that you want opinions on, figured out before?
Yeah, help me out with my DeAndre Swift and Cam Akers dilemma.
So from what I've been hearing, Cam Akers is playing on Thursday. It's been listed as questionable. Didn't really practice today, which is also, if he doesn't practice the day before game, that's a really bad sign. I'd probably lean towards DeAndre Swift, but if DeAndre Swift is looking like he might not even play on this weekend, then you're going to have to be forced into playing Cam Akers.
Now, Cam Akers did practice today.
Was it limited or full practice?
Full practice today, so he is full go, whereas DeAndre Swift has been hurt and he's been limited because of an illness. He didn't play on Sunday and apparently is still limited because of an illness, which scares me.
I feel like Akers looks like such a great start, but he's going to be that guy that disappoints so many teams out there. But it's like you have to start him because Swift isn't going to play. Like you have to start him.
Well, that's the thing is like I wish he was playing Sundays so that I could make a decision.
Exactly.
But if I don't start Cam Akers and then DeAndre Swift isn't a full go, then I'm screwed.
I would
start Zack Moss, which we already talked about.
So let me ask a question. If you're going to play Cam Akers, you're putting him in as your RB2 because you can't put a Thursday night player in your flex spot or you're a complete rookie. So if you do that, what are you giving up in your RB2 spot?
DeAndre Swift.
So let's say you play Cam Akers and then DeAndre Swift decides he's playing, he's not sick. Who are you giving up in your flex spot if you have to play DeAndre Swift?
Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm not starting DeAndre Swift over Juju on Sunday night against Buffalo.
I wouldn't either.
So would you be comfortable playing Juju and Cam Akers if DeAndre Swift ends up playing?
See, that's the thing. DeAndre Swift against Green Bay is a pretty juicy matchup. He went off last time he was a full go. He's the number one running back.
Let me ask a better question. Are you able to play someone, if you don't play Cam Akers Thursday, and then you realize you can't play DeAndre Swift, do you have another running back to plug in besides Zack Moss?
Todd Gurley or Zack Moss. That's really it. I mean, I could go waiver wire with like a Ty Johnson, but I've got the 10 waiver wire picks, so no promises there.
Well, I have my question.
Okay, what's your question, Brian?
My question is, I have a bye week in playoffs in 2 leagues, and I have a bye week in a consolation bracket in our league. Do I drink a mimosa or a Bloody Mary on Sunday? Because I have no fantasy relevance whatsoever.
Bloody Mary, don't be a
of course.
freaking good choice.
I think you got to also look up your matchups for week 15 to make sure they're...
Oh, I got those matchups ready.
Ready?
I got some waiver wires.
What about week 16? Do you have the right defense in week 16?
Oh, yeah. Where this is disclosed information. I mean, actually, technically, you're not in my league, so I guess. But I got some good waiver wire pickups for defense for week 15 and 16. And a lot of guys are going to be dropped, and we're going to be ready for them.
It's always good news.
So, yeah, Bloody Mary. I've got my Bloody
100%.
Mary mix. This is Sunday ritual.
Of course.
All right, so some final remarks. Make sure to always like, subscribe, and share this podcast. It's a waiver wire day. Plug in your waiver wires. See who got dropped. They could be guys that could help your team out this week. Don't celebrate your victory too early. You still have 2 more games left to play. And as always, remind players to adjust their lineups unless you're playing them.
It's not collusion. It's the correct thing to do.
Right. So, I always would like to end our podcast. Cheers, boys.